Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of chapter 1 of Let's Read Twilight. And I know the last part was incredibly long, and I'm hoping to kind of streamline this commentary this time, but there is a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. I didn't sleep well that night, even after I was done crying. The constant whooshing of the rain and wind across the roof wouldn't fade into the background. And yes, only whoosh of the whooshing was italicized, so I guess it's more like a whooshing. I pulled the faded old quilt over my head, and later added the pillow too, but I couldn't fall asleep until after midnight, when the rain finally settled into a quieter drizzle. Thick fog was all I could see through my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me. You could never see the sky here. It was like a cage. That makes no sense. I can understand if the sky was like a ceiling that you couldn't see, like, above you, but you can go clearly in any other direction. So it's not a cage. A cage implies that you're covered in all directions, and you are not. So bullshit. We're gonna start another counter for that, right? Yeah. Breakfast with Charlie was a quiet event. He wished me good luck at school. I thanked him, knowing his hope was wasted. Good luck tended to avoid me, mostly because you're a really pessimistic bitch. Good luck doesn't happen to people who are not optimistic, because you know what? Good luck is just people who go out and they eventually find the right chance. If you're pessimistic and don't take chances, you're never gonna have good luck because you didn't take a chance in the first place. But whatever, life advice will come later. Charlie left first, off to the police station that was his wife and family. After he left, I sat at the old square oak table in one of the 3 unmatching chairs and examined his small kitchen, with its dark paneled walls, bright yellow cabinets, and white linoleum floor. Nothing was changed. My mother had painted the cabinets 18 years ago in an attempt to bring some sunshine into the house. Over the small fireplace in the adjoining Over the small fireplace in the adjoining handkerchief-sized family room was a row of pictures. That is probably the worst metaphor I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, at least bad metaphors usually will make sense. How do you describe a room as handkerchief-sized? Like, is it really that small? That you're not in this shanty of a house. It sounds like you have a fairly nice house. It might be a little, old, but it's certainly not like, living in a tiny little apartment in New York with, 10 other family members. No. And no, that's not racist. I'm not implying for any ethnicity. I'm just saying, in general, she's with one other person who's living in a regular-sized house. I really do not believe that she's finding a family room or a living room that's small. But we'll, see where that comes from. Over the small fireplace in the adjoining handkerchief, blah, blah, blah. First a wedding picture of Charlie and my mom in Las Vegas, then one of the 3 of us in the hospital after I was born. Then one of the 3 of us in the hospital. So you can't tell between a full-grown adult male, a full-grown adult female, and a newborn. Bella is the worst biologist in the world. Let's see here. Sorry, that line just cracked me up. Taken by a helpful nurse, followed by the possession of my school pictures up to last year's. Those were embarrassing to look at. I would have to see what I could do to get Charlie to put them somewhere else, at least while I was living here. It was impossible, being in this house, not to realize that Charlie had never gotten over my mom. It made me uncomfortable. That he has family pictures up? That makes no sense. Like, yeah, maybe painting the cabinets weren't his first priority. Who cares? He has, like, a wedding picture up. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. But it's not like he has a shrine to your mom. I am going to regret those words later, I bet. I didn't want to be too early at school, but I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I donned my jacket, which had the feel of a biohazard suit. Yes, a winter jacket, at best, feels like a biohazard suit. Do you even know what one looks like? Let alone feels like? God. And headed out into the rain. Yeah, it must have been acid rain for wearing a biohazard suit. It was just drizzling still, not enough to soak me through immediately as I reached for the house key that was always hidden under the eaves by the door, and locked up. Wouldn't you just have a regular key? Yeah, whatever. The sloshing of my new waterproof boots was unnerving. I missed the normal crunch of gravel as I walked. I couldn't pause and admire my truck again as I wanted. Yeah, the truck that you hated until you saw it. I was in a hurry to get out of the misty wet that swirled around my head and clung to my hair under my hood. Inside the truck, it was nice and dry. Either Billy or Charlie had obviously cleaned it up, but the tan upholstered seats still smelled faintly of tobacco, gasoline, and peppermint. Where would you put gasoline inside the car? I mean, I understand you put it through the gas, into the gas tank, but actually, like, inside the car where you would sit, like, I would watch out. This thing seems kind of flammable. The engine started quickly, to my relief, but loudly, roaring to life and then idling at top volume. Well, a truck this old was bound to have a flaw. The antique radio worked, plus I hadn't expected. Okay, unless you have, like, a World War II era radio sitting next to you on the passenger seat, I highly doubt you can call this an antique. Finding the school wasn't difficult, though I'd never been there before. The school was, like most other things, just off the highway. So this clearly isn't that small of a town if you have a highway running through it. It was not obvious that it was a school. Only the sign, which declared it to be the Forks High School, made me stop. It looks like a collection of matching houses, built with maroon-colored bricks, as opposed to mauve-colored bricks. There were so many trees and shrubs I couldn't see its size at first. Where was the feel of the institution? I wondered nostalgically. So wait. So unless a school looks like an institution, like a like a psychologically impaired, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh gosh, hold on, folks, one sec. Let's just say a sanatorium, for lack of a better word. So unless it looks like that, or a jail, anything that like you really wouldn't want to associate with the school. This doesn't, so it doesn't look like a school. Like, you really need to change what your standards are, woman. Blah, blah, blah. Where were the chain link fences? The metal detectors? Again, who thinks nostalgically on that? Where were the barking, gosh. Sorry, folks, one more time. Where were the barking German shepherds? Where were the guards with M16 assault rifles? Like, what the fuck kind of school did you go to? Were you inner city? Like, I highly doubt that you went to that bad of a school that you needed that, but we'll go on. I parked in front of the first building, which had a small sign over the door reading front office. No one else was parked there, so I was sure it was off limits, but I decided I would get directions inside instead of circling around in the rain like an idiot. It's a school. You can't get that lost. It's a small school at best. The front office is right next to the school. You can find where to park. Whatever. I would get in directions and blah, blah, blah. I stepped unwillingly out of the twisty truck cab and walked down a little stone path lined with dark hedges. I took a deep breath before opening the door. She apparently is really exerting herself getting inside. Inside it was brightly lit and warmer than I'd hoped. Because apparently Bella is a night walker. I don't know. The office was small, a little waiting area with padded folding chairs and padded walls, if it's more like an institution at least. Orange-flecked commercial carpet, notices and awards cluttering the wall, a big clock ticking loudly. Plants grew everywhere in large plastic pots, as if there wasn't enough greenery outside. The room was cut in half by a long counter, cluttered with wire baskets full of papers and brightly colored flyers taped to its front. This is a pretty good description. Sounds like a real school. There were 3 desks behind the counter, one of which was managed by a large, red-haired woman wearing glasses. She was wearing a purple t-shirt, which immediately made me feel overdressed. We don't know what you're wearing, so how do we know if you're overdressed or not? I mean, it's kind of the reader's job to make judgment calls, but whatever. The red-haired woman looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm Isabella Swan," I informed her, and saw the immediate awareness light up her eyes. I was expected. A topic of gossip, no doubt. Daughter of the chief's flighty ex-wife, come home at last. How goddamn full of yourself do you have to be to constantly be bringing up the fact that you are the center of attention at this place, as if everyone is waiting for you? Really, Bella? God! Of course, she said. She dug through a precariously stacked pile of documents on her desk till she found the one she was looking for. "I have your schedule right here, and a map of the school." She brought several sheets to the counter to show me. She went through the classes for me, highlighting the best route each on the map. Oh, that's actually very nice. And gave me a slip to have each teacher sign, which I was to bring back at the end of the day. She smiled at me and hoped, like Charlie, that I would like it here in Forks. I smiled back as convincingly as I could, which was probably more of a kind of... And I know you can't actually see me at the moment, but you can imagine the kind of face one would make while making that sound. When I went back out to my truck, other students were starting to arrive. Knowing Bella, she would probably say staring. I drove around the school, following the line of traffic. How complicated is it to get to this school? Do you have to go through a fucking maze to get to the school? You were just at the front office. To put it in perspective, at my high school, the front office was on the same parking lot as the entrance to the school, which also had a parking lot for the school. How is the school fucking designed? I was glad to see that most of the cars were older like mine. Nothing flashy. Right away, comparing yourself. At home, I lived in one of the few lower-income neighborhoods that were included in the Paradise Valley district. It was a common thing to see a new Mercedes or Porsche in the student lot. So, wait. You were in the lower-income district, so you saw the nicest cars. Where's the correlation here, people? The nicest car here was a shiny Volvo, and it stood out. Still, I cut the engine as soon as I was in the spot so that the thunderous volume wouldn't draw attention to me. Yes, because you're clearly one not to want attention, Bella, constantly talking about how everyone is drawing eyes on you. I looked at the map in the truck, trying to memorize it now. You could just look at it in between class, but whatever. Hopefully I wouldn't have to walk around with it stuck in front of my nose all day. I promise I did not read that line beforehand. I stuffed everything in my bag, slung the strap over my shoulder, and sucked in a huge breath. I'm noticing a pattern here, that before she goes to walk through any doors, she has to take a deep breath. Kind of an odd practice. I can do this, I lied to myself feebly. No one was going to bite me. Oh, Stephanie Meyer, you are clearly a wonderful wit of our generation, foreshadowing the fact that vampires will be involved in this book, and that they bite people. So she's saying no one's going to bite me, because she will meet Edward shortly, or at least I would assume. Oh, this is gonna be fun. I finally exhaled and stepped out of the truck. So was she just sitting there like... 5, 10, 15 seconds later, who knows how long, she finally exhales. Like, she has to get through all those thoughts, and then she takes a breath. I kept my face pulled back into my hood as I walked to the sidewalk, crowded with teenagers. My plain black jacket didn't stand out, I noticed with relief. Yes, because all of them are wearing these, slick overcoats. Once I got around the cafeteria building, 3 was easy to spot. Oh, building 3. I apologize. A large black 3 was painted on a white square in the east corner. Then you didn't need to tell us it was building 3. We could figure that out. I felt my breathing gradually creeping toward hyperventilation as I approached the door. That's why she takes deep breaths, because apparently she has a horrible fear of seeing doors. So that's why she has to take a deep breath. I mean, before she opened the car door, she did it. Before she opened the door to the office, she did it. If she doesn't take that deep breath, she starts hyperventilating, panicking, freaking out. This is actually very interesting characterization. I tried holding my breath as I followed 2 unisex raincoats through the door. There's a surprise! She held her breath before going through a door. The classroom was small. The people in front of me stopped just inside the door to hang up their coats on a long row of hooks. I copied them. There were 2 girls. One, a porcelain-colored blonde. Okay. If she's Asian, that's totally racist. Although I don't know many Asians who have porcelain-colored skin, but regardless. The other was pale, with light brown hair. At least my skin wouldn't be a standout here. Yes, because out of a school of, 300, 400 some people, you are going to be the only pale-skinned person out of 3. Yeah, that makes sense. I took the slip to the teacher, a tall, balding man whose yeah, that makes sense, he's balding and has hair, whose desk had a nameplate identifying him as Mr. Mason. Okay. He gawked at me when he saw my name. Not an encouraging response, and of course I flushed tomato red. I am 100% sure that none of this actually happened. The gawking, I mean. When someone was surprised she came, that people were gawking. This is fan fiction. I'm sorry, I meant to get into this later, but this is a total fanfic about herself. But at least he sent me to an empty desk at the back without introducing me to the class. What school does that? It was harder for my new classmates to stare at me in the back, but somehow they managed. No, they did not! I am 100% sure. I kept my eyes down the reading list the teacher had given me. It was fairly basic. Bronte, never heard of him. Shakespeare, well, yeah. Chaucer, Faulkner, yeah, that's typical. Haven't heard of the first one, though. I'd already read everything. That was comforting and boring. I highly doubt this. I cannot believe that Bella is a well-read individual. I wondered if my mom would send me a folder of my old essays, or if she would think that was cheating. I went through different arguments with her in my head while the teacher droned on. What teacher is just write an essay on Shakespeare? They will give you prompts at any school you go to. I am almost certain. I apologize. I know I reuse a lot of phrases, but I am almost certain that no teacher will just tell you to write about something so that you can just hand in a random essay. Plus, I mean, you're going up the grade school unless you were held back. So what are you going to use, your 7th grade paper on Shakespeare? Like, yeah, I don't think it's going to be that wonderful, Bella.